Hello everyone, you're welcome back to Ireland Academy, and in this video we will be continuing our series on slit lamp illumination techniques. Today we'll be looking at the Von Herick technique on our patient for today. But before we go ahead, we need to talk about why we perform the Von Herick technique on our patients. So first of all, if you want to dilate your patient, you need to find out if your patient's anterior chamber is deep enough to be dilated. You need to ensure that your patient's anterior chamber is not shallow. Next, if you suspect that your patient is at risk of angle closure glaucoma, it's a good time to perform this technique on your patient and be sure that your patient's anterior chamber is not shallow. The Von Herick technique is not the only method that we can use to estimate our patient's anterior chamber depth. You can use the OCT, you can also use the gonioscope. But for instance, you perform the Von Herick technique and you find out that your patient's anterior chamber is shallow. That's a good time to go ahead with your gonioscopy to find out if your patient is fit to be dilated. So let's get right into it and perform this technique on our patients. But remember that when you want to perform your slit lamp examination, your illumination in your room has to be dim. So we're leaving our lights on for the purpose of this video. And I also mentioned in my earlier videos that for you to perform your slit lamp examination, your patient has to be prepared, your instrument has to be prepared, and you, the examiner, also has to be prepared. I have made videos on those, so you can go ahead to watch those videos and come back to continue with this. Someone asked a question under the comment section of my optic section technique. She said that I needed to show how I got my narrow beam. So I'm going to be showing you right now how I got my narrow beam. So for the Von Herick technique, we'll be using the same illumination that we used in our optic section technique. Remember I said that the slit width has to be narrowest, like a knife edge width. So I'm going to be showing you right now how to get that knife edge width. So it's either you use your patient's nose, the bridge of your patient's nose, or your patient's closed eyelid to get this slim width, or you can use this focusing rod. So for the purpose of this video, I'll be using this focusing rod to show you how to get your narrow beam. Alright, remember that we use the narrow beam for the optic section, and we also use that narrow beam for the Von Herick. So this is my focusing rod. I'll be inserting it here. Then I go ahead to reduce my rheostat to the barest minimum and turn on my slit lamp. So when I turn it on, I can increase the brightness of my illumination until the first light just shows. Once this first light shows, this is the width you should use for your optic section or for your Von Herick technique. You can see that it's getting wide. And another way to do it is to turn off your slit width adjustment knob completely. So when you turn it on, the first light that shows is the width you should use for your optic section or for your Von Herick technique. And once you get your slit width, this is now the time for you to increase your illumination brightness. Because the width is narrow, your patient is not going to feel dazzled by the light that comes. But if you're going to use a wide beam for any test or for any procedure, make sure you reduce the intensity of your light. Alright, so let's turn on our illumination again for this technique. I'm going to turn it off and close my slit width adjustment knob. So I go ahead to turn it on again, and this is it. So you make sure you explain the procedure to your patient. So while performing any slit lamp technique, you should be looking at three things: the angle, the illumination, and the magnification. So for the Herick technique, our angle is going to be set at 60 degrees. The magnification has to be around 16x, but you can start from 10 and then increase to 16. The illumination has to be bright and narrow, or rather the beam of your illumination has to be narrow and bright. So let's go ahead to set our patient. So I've already set my angle at 60 degrees. If you don't want it to shift, you can lock your angle in place. Then the next thing you have to do is to make sure that the illumination is at the temporal limbus of your patient. So for the Herick technique, you measure from the temporal limbus and you also measure from the nasal limbus. Then you judge the depth of your patient's anterior chamber by comparing the space in between the endothelium of the cornea and the light being reflected from the iris. They are comparing the thickness of that space with the thickness of the cornea. When we're done with that, we move to the nasal limbus of our patient. So when you are done estimating the depth of the anterior chamber on the right eye, you move to the left eye and you do the same thing. Remember, you place it at the temporal limbus, after which you move it to the nasal limbus. And there are some mistakes that you can make when you're performing this technique. The first one is not placing the illumination as close to the limbus as possible. And the second one is not making your cornea to be in sharp focus. The third one is if your angle is less than 60 degrees. So when you are done, you record your findings. This is how you record your findings. What you should be looking out for is the space in between the light reflected off the cornea and that reflected off the iris, the dark space that we saw earlier. And you record from grade 4 down to grade 0. Grade 4 means the angle is wide, while grade 0 means it is closed. When it is grade 0, that means there is no black space observed between the iris and the cornea. Remember the two lights. Then if it's grade 1, then the width of that empty space as compared to the corneal thickness is less than 1/4. This means your patient's angle is extremely narrow. If the width of the empty space as compared to the corneal thickness is 1/4, that means it's grade 2, and you say your patient's angle is narrow. Then, if it's above 1/4 to half of the corneal thickness, it is grade 3, and your patient's angle is 0. Then, if it's equal, if the space between the iris and the cornea, that is that dark space, is the same width as the width of your patient's cornea, that is grade 4, and your patient's angle is wide open. Or if that space is even slightly bigger than the corneal thickness, that is also grade 4. Your patient's angle is also wide open. Trivia time. What would you call this angle? Or how would you estimate this angle? Would you say it's a grade 4, grade 3, grade 2, grade 1, or grade 0? Let me know in the comment section. This is another picture I attached. Would you say this is a grade 0, grade 1, 2, 3, 4? Can you see a dark space in between the cornea and the iris? So if you enjoyed this video, or if you learned something from this video, share this video with your colleagues, your friends, and give this video a thumbs up for me. Also, try as much as possible to subscribe and hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever a new video comes up. Keep practicing.